Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Thought Channel. Tonight we travel into the vast and astonishing history of China, a civilization whose story stretches across thousands of years of invention, empire, philosophy, rebellion, and renewal. This is a land where emperors built hidden palaces, armies of clay guarded the dead, and scholars shaped governments with brush ink and on. Memory will trace a path from oracle bones and bronze vessels to Silk Roads, treasure fleets, lost dynasties and cities had once done the world. Along the way, we'll find inventions that changed human history and ideas so powerful they still shape daily life today. China's past is not a single story. It is a great unfolding of families, rivers, battles, poems, rituals, and dreams. Each age leaves something behind: a character written on bone, a tower above a capital, a fragment of porcelain carried across an ocean. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, to one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften, allow your breathing to slow, and as your mind begins to loosen its grip on the day, join me as we explore this extraordinary civilization together. Let's begin. China has one of humanity's longest continuous written histories, long before many ancient kingdoms had left a clear record of themselves. Chinese scribes were carving questions into bone, casting names into bronze, and preserving memory through written signs. What makes this story so astonishing is not only its age, but its continuity. The symbols changed over time, the sounds shifted, and dynasties rose and vanished, yet the written tradition remained a bridge across thousands of years. A person today can look at ancient characters and still sense a family resemblance to the script used in modern Chinese. That is rare in world history. It means that the past was never completely buried. It could be copied, argued with, honored, and reinterpreted by later generations. Kings, philosophers, poets, farmers, officials, and rebels all became part of a record that kept unfolding. China's history is not just a line of events. It is a conversation carried through ink, stone, silk, bamboo, and paper. The Great Wall was never one single war. The image most people carry is of one mighty barrier stretching across mountains like a single unbroken spine. The reality is far stranger and more interesting. What we call the Great Wall is really a vast family of walls, trenches, towers, forts, and signal stations, built by different states and dynasties over many centuries. Some sections were made from tempered earth, others used brickstone reeds, or whatever the local landscape could provide. In desert regions, builders packed layers of gravel and clay into shapes that could survive harsh wind. In mountain passes, walls followed ridges where soldiers could watch the horizon for movement. These defenses were not only about stopping armies. They controlled trade-marked borders, slowed raids, and sent messages with smoke or flame. The wall became less like a single structure and more like a long memory of fear, strategy, labor, and empire written across northern China. China invented paper and changed the memory of civilization. Before paper became common, writing could be heavy, costly, and awkward. People used bamboo strips, wooden tablets, silk, and other materials that were useful but often limited. Then Chinese innovation transformed the way information could travel. Early paper was made by breaking down fibers from plants, bark, cloth, and fishing nets, then spreading the watery pulp into thin sheets. The result was lighter than bamboo and far cheaper than silk. Suddenly, records, letters, drawings, religious texts, poetry, official orders, and private thoughts could move through society more easily. This did not simply help scholars. It changed administration, education, art, and trade. A government could keep more records. A poem could be copied by more hands. A merchant could manage accounts with greater ease. Over time, the idea spread far beyond China, reshaping cultures that had never seen the workshops where it began. Paper made memory portable, and the world never returned to its older silence. The Silk Road turned China into a crossroads of continents. The name sounds like a single road lined with bales of silk, but it was really a shifting network of land and sea routes linking East Asia with Central Asia, India, Persia, the Middle East, and Europe. Goods moved along these paths in stages, carried by caravans, sailors, traders, and middlemen, who might never travel the whole distance themselves. Chinese silk was one of the most desired products, but it was only part of the story. Horses, glassware, spices, gems, metals, medicines, and musical instruments also crossed frontiers. So did religions, stories, technologies, and artistic styles. Buddhism entered China along these routes, while Chinese inventions and luxury goods moved outward. Oasis towns became places where languages mingled and ideas changed shape. The Silk Road was not only a trade system, it was a long corridor of curiosity where distant peoples met through objects, beliefs, and rumors carried across desert and mountain. The Terracotta Army guarded an emperor no one could approach. When farmers near Xi'an uncovered fragments of clay warriors, they had stumbled onto one of the most extraordinary burial complexes ever found. Beneath the earth stood thousands of life-sized soldiers arranged in battle formation for the afterlife of Chun Jifeng. Each figure was made with careful attention to rank, hairstyle, armor posture, and expression. They were not identical decorations. They looked like an army of individuals ready to serve a ruler who had unified warring states with ruthless determination. The clay soldiers were only one part of a much larger underground world. Ancient accounts describe palaces, offices, treasures, flowing rivers of mercury, and a miniature cosmos built for the emperor's continued rule beyond death. His actual tomb remains unopened, which adds to the fascination. We can see the army standing guard, but the central mystery still waits nearby. It feels as though the emperor's command over secrecy has lasted for more than 2,000 years. Ancient Chinese astronomers recorded exploding stars before telescopes existed. Court observers watched the sky with extraordinary patience because celestial events were thought to carry meaning for rulers and states. Their duty was not casual stargazing. It was disciplined observation night after night, generation after generation. When a new light appeared when none had been before, they wrote it down. Some of these records describe guest stars, sudden bright points that appeared in the heavens and then faded away. Modern astronomers have matched several of these observations with supernova, remnants, the glowing remains of massive stellar explosions. One famous event was seen in the 11th century when a brilliant star appeared in the sky and remained visible for months. Today, we associate that explosion with the Crap Nebula. What is remarkable is that people with no telescopes and no modern physics still created records valuable to science almost 1,000 years later. Their careful notes became a bridge between imperial astrology and the life cycle of stars. The Grand Canal linked northern and southern China for centuries. Rivers in China often run from west to east, which made north-south transport difficult to cross such a vast country. The Grand Canal solved that problem on a breathtaking scale. It joined waterways into a long engineered route that allowed grain goods officials, soldiers, and messages to move between regions that might otherwise have felt worlds apart. This was not merely a convenience. It helped hold empires together. Northern capitals needed food from the fertile south, and the canal carried that lifeline through locks, channels, lakes, and river connections. Along its banks, market towns grew warehouses filled, and Pokemon learned the moods of water and mud. Families lived by its rhythms, governments depended on it. The project required planning, maintenance, and labor across many generations. It shows how Chinese states could think in systems larger than any single city. The canal was a moving artery, carrying the wealth of one region into the political heart of another. China's imperial exam system shaped government through learned ambition. For much of Chinese history, power was not only inherited by mobile birth or taken by force. It could also be pursued through study. The imperial examination system tested candidates on classical texts, moral reasoning, literary skill, and administrative ideals. In theory, a talented man from a modest family could rise through scholarship and enter official life. In practice, education required money, time, and support, so privilege still mattered. Yet the dream was powerful. Families invested everything in a son's preparation, because success could change the destiny of an entire household. Villages celebrated a graduate as proof that learning could lift status. Exam halls became places of pressure, hope, exhaustion, and discipline. Candidates wrote for hours in cramped cells, knowing that a single result might decide their future. This system created a culture where books became ladders, brushwork became ambition, and the state tied its authority to mastery of a shared moral and literary tradition. Gunpowder began as an alchemist's search for immortality. One of history's great ironies is that a substance later used in warfare emerged from experiments meant to extend life. Chinese alchemists mixed minerals and other ingredients, while seeking elixirs that could purify the body, transform matter, or unlock longevity. In that search, mixtures involving saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal revealed a strange power. They could flare, burn rapidly, and produce explosive force. At first, the discovery entered worlds of spectacle, ritual medicine, and fire display. Over time, its uses became more practical and more dangerous. Fire arrows, bombs, mines, and early guns changed the nature of battle across Asia and eventually beyond. The same quest that imagined eternal life helped create a technology that could end lives with terrifying speed. That contradiction makes the story unforgettable. It shows how discovery does not always follow the intention of the discoverer. Sometimes a search for transcendence opens a door into an entirely different future. The Forbidden City held a world hidden behind red walls. At the heart of Beijing stood a palace complex designed not simply as a residence, but as a universe of power. Ordinary people could not freely enter. Even many officials saw only parts of its inner order. Within its walls were halls of ceremony, private apartments, gardens, offices, storerooms, gates, courtyards, and carefully arranged pathways. Every color, roofline, and direction carried meaning. Yellow tiles marked imperial authority. Axial planning placed the ruler at the symbolic center of the realm. Life inside followed strict rules of rank, ritual access, and performance. Servants, guards, eunuchs, concubines, scholars, princes, and emperors moved through a system built to separate the sacred ruler from the outside world. Yet behind the grandyard were human dramas of illness, rivalry, loneliness, education, fear, and ambition. The palace was both stage and cage. It projected perfect order to the empire, while enclosing lives that could be as fragile and uncertain as anyone's. Oracle bones preserved royal questions from the Shang dynasty. Imagine holding a piece of bone and finding that it contains a king's worry from more than 3,000 years ago. That is the power of oracle bones. Shang rulers used turtle shells and animal shoulder blades in divination rituals. Questions were carved into them about harvests, warfare, weather, childbirth, hunting, illness, and sacrifice. Heat was applied, cracks appeared, and diviners interpreted those cracks as messages from ancestors or spirits. The answers mattered because the Shang court believed unseen powers shaped success and disaster. These bones are among the earliest major sources for Chinese writing, but they are more than linguistic treasures. They reveal a society concerned with practical survival and supernatural approval. At the same time, they show rulers asking whether rain would come, whether a campaign would succeed, and whether a queen's birth would be fortunate. Through these fragments, the ancient court stops feeling remote. It becomes human, anxious, strategic, and intensely alive. Bronze vessels once carried power, ancestry, and sacred ritual meaning. In early China, bronze was not just a useful metal. It was a language of status, memory, and sacred obligation. Elite families commissioned vessels for ceremonies involving food, wine, music, and offerings to ancestors. These objects could be massive, intricate, and technically demanding. Their surfaces carried animal masks, spirals, inscriptions, and forms that still feel mysterious today. During rituals, the living honored the dead, and the dead were expected to protect the living. A bronze vessel might proclaim lineage, commemorate a military victory, or preserve a royal gift in metal. To possess such objects was to stand within a chain of authority reaching backward through generations. Their production required mining, casting, knowledge workshops, and social organization. They were artworks, ritual tools, political statements, and family archives all at once. When archaeologists find them in tombs, they are not merely discovering beautiful antiques, they are entering a world where ancestry was power made visible. The Zhou dynasty lasted longer than any other Chinese dynasty. The Zhou era stretched across centuries, long enough for its political world to change almost beyond recognition. It began with kings who claimed a moral right to rule, often described as the mandate of heaven. This idea became one of the most important concepts in Chinese political thought. A ruler's authority depended not only on ancestry, but on virtue and proper conduct. If disasters, corruption, or suffering overwhelmed the realm, people could argue that heaven had withdrawn its support. Over time, Zhou power weakened as regional lords became stronger. What began as a royal order broke into competing states' alliances, betrayals, reforms, and wars. If this period produced many of the ideas that later dynasties inherited, it gave China political vocabulary, ritual ideals, bronze inscriptions, and philosophical questions that never disappeared. The dynasty endured, not because it stayed unchanged, but because its legacy survived. Through transformation, conflict, and argument, Confucius reshaped Chinese thought without ever ruling a kingdom. He lived in an age of disorder, when old political bonds were weakening and rulers competed for advantage. Rather than commanding armies or founding a dynasty, he offered a different kind of power. He taught that society could be repaired through moral cultivation, proper conduct, respect for parents, loyalty, ritual, and humane government. To him, leadership was not only about control, it was about example. A ruler who governed with virtue could inspire order more deeply than one who relied only on punishment. During his lifetime, he did not achieve the political influence he hoped for. He wandered, advised, taught, and faced disappointment. Yet his students preserved his conversations and carried his ideas forward. Later governments turned his teachings into educational foundations, exam material, and moral language. For official life, his influence grew precisely because he became more than a statesman. He became a teacher whose questions followed China for centuries. Lao Tzu inspired a philosophy that found wisdom in softness. The tradition associated with Lhasa offers one of the most striking alternatives in Chinese thought. Instead of praising force, ambition, and rigid control, it looks toward water, humility, emptiness, and naturalness. The Tao, often translated as the way, is not a simple rule or command. It suggests the deep pattern by which things arise, change, and return. The famous text linked to Lhasa speaks in brief, paradoxical lines that invite reflection rather than obedience. It praises the valley because it receives. It praises water because it yields yet wears down stone. For rulers, this could mean governing with restraint. For ordinary life, it could mean moving with circumstances rather than always struggling against them. The appeal is profound because it does not feel like weakness. It feels like another kind of strength in a world of war and hierarchy. This philosophy whispered that the soft, the low, and the flexible might outlast the hard. Sun Tzu turned strategy into a guide for patience. The work associated with Sun Tzu is often remembered as a manual for war, but its deepest lessons are about perception, timing, and restraint. It argues that the best victories are not always won through spectacular battles. Sometimes the highest skill is to defeat an opponent's plans before fighting begins. This requires knowing the terrain, understanding morale, studying deception, and recognizing when action would be wasteful. The famous emphasis on knowing oneself and knowing the enemy is not a slogan of aggression. It is a warning against blindness. Armies can be destroyed by pride, confusion, exhaustion, and bad information before weapons decide the outcome. That is why the text has fascinated generals, business leaders, athletes, and negotiators far beyond ancient China. It treats conflict as a problem of mind as much as muscle. Its enduring power comes from one unsettling idea. The smartest move may be the one that avoids the clash everyone expected. Chen Jifeng unified China and standardized its written script. Before unification, the Chinese world was divided among rival states with different laws, currencies, measures, and writing styles. The Qin victory changed that landscape with stunning force. The first emperor did not simply defeat enemies. He tried to make the realm function as one system. Roads were built, weights and measures were regulated. Axle widths were standardized to help carts move through rutted roads. Most importantly, written forms were brought into a more unified style. This mattered because China contained many spoken varieties, but a shared, written system could help officials communicate across distance. The reforms were harsh, and the Qin regime became infamous for severity, forced labor, censorship, and punishment. Yet its administrative vision outlived the dynasty itself. Later rulers inherited the idea that China could be governed as a centralized empire. The Qin lasted only briefly, but it created a template so powerful that its name still echoes in the word China. Legalist reforms helped build an empire with astonishing speed. The state of Qin rose from a western frontier PA into the force that conquered its rivals, and legalist thinking helped make that transformation possible. Its reformers cared less about noble tradition and more about disciplined agriculture, military reward, and clear laws. Rank could be tied to service rather than old pedigree. Farmers were encouraged or pressured to produce more grain. Soldiers could gain status through battlefield achievement. Families and communities were organized, so people watched one another and reported wrongdoing. This created a state that was efficient, demanding, and frighteningly focused. Legalism assumed that people were best governed through incentives and punishments, not appeals to virtue alone. The result was a machine capable of mobilizing labor and armies on an enormous scale. It helped Qin win, but it also made Qin rule deeply resented. The same severity that built the empire quickly may have helped bring it down quickly. Its success contained the seeds of its collapse. Han armies pushed Chinese influence deep into Central Asia. The Han dynasty inherited a vast imperial framework, but it also faced powerful nomadic confederations on the northern frontier. To survive and expand, Han rulers used diplomacy, marriage alliances, trade fortifications, and military campaigns. Over time, their armies moved westward into regions of deserts, oasis mountains, and steppe corridors. This was not simply conquest for glory. Control the frontier routes helped protect trade and manage relations with peoples who commanded horses, mobility, and knowledge of the grasslands. As hand power extended into the Tarim Basin and beyond, Chinese goods and influence reached deeper into Inner Asia. Envoys encountered unfamiliar kingdoms, rare animals, strong horses, and markets tied to distant civilizations. These contacts helped shape the routes later remembered as part of the Silk Road. The story shows that China was never sealed away from the wider world. Its borders were active zones of negotiation, danger, exchange, and ambition. The Han dynasty gave China its enduring majority identity. When people speak of the Han Chinese today, they are using a name rooted in a dynasty. That became one of the great foundations of Chinese civilization. The Han period strengthened imperial institutions, expanded territory, promoted classical learning, and created patterns of government that later ages admired. It was a time of court politics, frontier warfare, technological growth, historical writing, and cultural confidence. The historian Simokian wrote a monumental account of the past that shaped how later generations understood history itself. Confucian learning gained official status, helping define the values expected of rulers and officials. At the same time, ordinary life remained diverse, with regional customs, languages, foods, and beliefs stretching across the empire. The identity that later took the Han name was not created in a single moment. It formed through administration, memory, shared texts, migration, and allegiance to a lasting imperial ideal. A dynasty became a name for a people. Chan Qian opened routes that transformed Eurasian exchange forever. His journey began not as a peaceful trade mission, but as a dangerous search for allies sent west by the armed court. Zhang Qian crossed lands where powerful steppe peoples controlled movement and information. He was captured, held for years, and still continued when he finally escaped. What he brought back was more valuable than treasure. He gave the Chinese court detailed knowledge of distant kingdoms, rich valleys, strong horses, unusual crops, and wider world beyond the frontier. His reports helped turn curiosity into policy. Envoys, merchants, soldiers, and caravans followed paths that linked China with Central Asia in deeper ways. Through those routes came grapes, alfalfa, glassware, music, religious ideas, and stories from far away. Chinese silk and other goods moved outward through many hands. Zhang Qian did not build a road in the ordinary sense. He opened the mental map after him. The West was no longer only rumor. It became reachable, negotiable, and historically unforgettable. Chinese silk reached Rome before Romans understood its origin. To wealthy Romans, silk was a wonder fabric. It was light, smooth, shimmering, and unlike anything produced in the Mediterranean world. Yet for a long time, they did not truly know where it came from or how it was made. Some imagined it was combed from trees. Others simply knew it arrived through long chains of trade passed across deserts, empires, and markets until its origin was almost mythical. In China, the secret was more intimate and practical. Silkworms fed on mulberry leaves, spun cocoons, and produced threads so fine that careful hands could unwind them into luxury. The craft required patience, timing, and generations of skill. By the time silk reached Roman elite, its price reflected every mile of uncertainty between producer and wearer. This strange distance gave China an invisible presence in Roman life. A senator's garment could carry the work of Chinese households, even while Rome barely understood the world behind the shine. The magnetic compass began as a tool for sacred alignment. Before it guided ships across open water, the compass belonged to a world of earth, sky, and invisible forces. Early Chinese lodestones naturally aligned with magnetic direction, and people noticed their strange ability to point. At first, this property was connected with divination and geomancy. Practitioners used direction to arrange tubes, buildings, and landscapes in ways believed to harmonize human life with cosmic patterns. A spoon-shaped lodestone migrassed on a polished plate, turning until its handle indicated south. It was a beautiful idea, part instrument and part ritual object. Over time, the practical value became impossible to ignore. Mariners could use magnetic direction when clouds hit the stars or land disappeared behind the horizon. That changed navigation profoundly. The same force once used to seek balance in burial grounds helped sailors cross seas with greater confidence. It is a reminder that technologies do not always begin in the place where they become famous. Early Chinese seismographs could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away. In the 2nd century, the scholar Zhang Heng created a device so astonishing that it still captures the imagination. It looked like a bronze vessel, decorated with dragons facing different directions around its base, set open-mouthed toads. According to historical accounts, when an earthquake occurred far away, a ball dropped from one dragon's mouth into the toad below, indicating the direction of the tremor. The machine did not measure shaking in the modern scientific way, and its exact inner mechanism remains debated. Still, the concept was remarkable. It showed that earthquakes could be detected as physical events traveling through the earth, even when people nearby felt nothing. This mattered to officials because distant disasters required rapid response. If a frontier region had been struck, the court needed to know. The device turned hidden movement into political knowledge long before modern census. Chinese thinkers were trying to listen to the restless planet beneath their feet. The Three Kingdoms era became legend through loyalty and betrayal. After the Han order weakened, rival powers struggled to control the fractured realm. The period that followed was filled with shifting alliances, bold generals, brilliant advisors, broken promises, and battles that later storytellers would never forget. Why? Shou and Wu competed not only with armies, but with reputation, strategy, and claims to legitimacy. Historical records preserve the political struggle, but later fiction transformed the era into something even larger. Heroes became symbols of honor, strategists became masters of almost supernatural insight. The trail carried moral weight, and friendship could seem stronger than death. Figures such as Liu Bei Guan, Yu Zhang Fei, Cao Cao Jus, Liang and San Quan entered popular memory through theater novels, games, and folk worship. The fascination lies in the human drama. China was divided in imagination, made the age feel unified by story. It became a mirror for questions that never fade. What is loyalty worth? And when does ambition become destiny? Cao Cao was both feared warlord and gifted poet. History often remembers him as cunning, ruthless, and dangerous, yet that picture is incomplete. Cao Cao was also a writer of striking power, a patron of talent, and a political figure whose intelligence helped reshape northern China during a time of collapse. He fought battles, managed officials, controlled emperors, and built institutions while the old Han world was coming apart. In literature, his poems reveal another side. They speak of hardship, aging, ambition, grief, and the vastness of life under a troubled sky. That contrast makes him fascinating. He was not simply a villain or a hero. He was a man of war who understood words, a strategist who could turn inward, and a ruler whose reputation changed, depending on who told the story. Later legends often darkened him, especially in tales that favored his rivals. Yet the historical Cao Cao resists easy judgment. He reminds us that power and artistry can live inside the same complicated person. Paper money first appeared in China during the Tang period, long before banknote became ordinary around the world. Chinese merchants were searching for ways to avoid hauling heavy strings of coins over long distances. Copper cash could be useful in daily trade, but bulk payments created real problems. In the Tang period, private exchange note began to appear as promises of value between merchants. These early instruments were not yet modern state-issued paper currency, but they pointed toward a revolution. During later centuries, especially under the Song, paper money became more formal and widespread. The idea was astonishing. A piece of printed paper could stand in for metal because people trusted the institution behind it. That trust was fragile, and governments sometimes issued too much, causing inflation and anxiety. Still, the invention changed economic imagination. Value no longer had to be carried only as weight. It could be represented by writing, seals, and confidence. Money became lighter, more abstract, and more powerful. Tang Han became one of the world's largest cities. At its height, the Tang capital was a planned metropolis of astonishing scale. Its broad avenues walled wards, markets, palaces, monasteries, and government. Offices formed a city that announced imperial confidence. People arrived from across China and far beyond it. Diplomats came with tribute and requests. Monks brought scriptures. Merchants carried perfumes, textiles, horses, medicines, and rare objects. Officials moved through a bureaucracy that linked the capital to distant provinces. The city's design reflected order, but its life was full of motion. Markets had fixed hours. Entertainers filled Persia. Districts, religious communities lived beside administrative power. The court attracted artists, scholars, soldiers, and visitors who wanted to witness the center of an empire. To walk its streets would have been to hear different accents and see goods from worlds most people would never visit. Chang'an was not merely large. It was a statement that China stood at the heart of a connected and cosmopolitan age. Foreign musicians, merchants, and monks filled Tang capital streets. The Tang capital was famous not only for its size, but for the remarkable variety of people who moved through it. Sabian traders from Central Asia became especially important in commerce, acting as cultural brokers between distant regions. Buddhist monks arrived from India, Korea, Japan, and other lands seeking texts, teachers, and sacred sites. Musicians and dancers brought styles that fascinated aristocratic audiences. Foreign clothing, foods, instruments, and languages became part of elite fashion and urban curiosity. This did not mean everyone lived together without tension. Outsiders could be admired, regulated, imitated, or mistrusted, depending on politics and circumstance. Still, the city's atmosphere was unusually open by the standards of many ancient capitals. It reminds us that Chinese history was not isolated. At certain moments, it was vividly international. A night in Tang, Chang'an might include music from beyond the deserts, incense from far markets, and conversations between people whose Homelands lay thousands of miles apart. Wu Xian became the only woman to rule China as emperor. She rose through one of the most controlled and dangerous environments in the world, the imperial court. Beginning as a palace woman, Wu Zetian survived rivalries, gained influence, and eventually dominated politics with extraordinary skill. She first exercised power through emperors connected to her by marriage and family, then took the throne in her own name. That step was almost unimaginable in the system, built around male dynastic succession. She promoted officials, used religious symbolism, supported Buddhism, expanded state power, and presented herself as a ruler chosen by cosmic order. Her enemies accused her of cruelty, manipulation, and ambition without limits. Some charges may reflect real political violence, while others were sharpened by later historians uncomfortable with female sovereignty. What cannot be denied is her ability. She ruled at the center of one of China's greatest dynasties and forced the political imagination to make room for her. Her reign remains dazzling, controversial, and impossible to ignore. Tang poetry turned everyday landscapes into immortal emotional worlds. During the Tang dynasty, poetry became one of the highest forms of cultural expression. It was not only an ornament for scholars, it was a way of seeing. A moon over a river could carry homesickness. A mountain path could suggest exile. A cup of wine might hold friendship sorrow, or defiance. The best poems often used simple images, but those images opened into deep feeling. This was partly because educated people shared literary traditions, historical references, and expectations about form. A short poem could carry layers of memory. Officials wrote while traveling to remote posts. Friends exchanged verses of departures. Monks, courtiers, wanderers, and soldiers all left traces in words. Time poetry endured because it made in motion precise without making it narrow. It captured moments that feel both ancient and immediate. Someone watching autumn light 13 centuries ago could speak in a way that still reaches a listener now. Levi wrote verses that still feel wildly alive. Few poets seem to move across the centuries with such restless energy. Levi became famous for poems filled with moonlight, wine, friendship, mountains, rivers, longing, and sudden freedom. His voice often feels spontaneous, as they were thought as just risen and taken flight. Legends made him even larger than life. He appears as a wanderer, a genius, a drinker, a court favorite, an exile, and almost an immortal of poetry. Yet beneath the legend is artistic control. His lines can sound effortless because they are shaped with great skill. He could turn a simple scene into something vast. A lonely cup becomes a conversation with the moon. A journey becomes a leap beyond ordinary limits. His work appealed because it seemed to break boundaries while remaining memorable and clear. In a culture that valued discipline, Levi offered a thrilling sense of release. He made poetry feel like motion through open air. Du Fu captured war, hunger, and tenderness in poetry. If Lai Bai often seems to soar, Du Fu often seems to witness. He lived through the devastation of rebellion, displacement, poverty, and political disappointment. His poems do not turn away from suffering. They describe separated families, ruined towns, officials under pressure, cold nights, and the ache of ordinary people caught in events they did not choose. Yet his greatness does not come from bleakness alone. He could also write with profound tenderness about children, friendship, aging, spring light, and the fragile comforts of home. His work joins personal feeling with historical crisis. That is why later readers called him a poet historian, although he was never merely recording events. He was transforming lived pain into language with moral force in his poems. The fate of a nation and the worry of one parent can occupy the same breath. Du Fu makes history intimate. He shows that war is measured not only in battles, but in empty rooms. The Silk Road carried Buddhism into China across deserts. Buddhism did not arrive in China as a single event. It came gradually through travelers, translators, merchants, monks, manuscripts, images, and sacred objects moving across Central Asia. Oasis cities became key stations where Indian, Iranian, Chinese, and local cultures met. Monks translated unfamiliar concepts into Chinese terms sometimes borrowing vocabulary from existing traditions to make new ideas understandable. This created both opportunity and confusion. Ideas about karma, rebirth, monastic life, meditation, compassion, and enlightenment enter the society already shaped by ancestor rites. Confucian ethics and Taoist thought. Over time, Buddhism became deeply Chinese while also remaining connected to wider Asia. It inspired cave temples, sculpture, pilgrimage, printing, philosophy, charity, and new forms of devotion. The journey across deserts was not only geographic, it was intellectual and emotional. A teaching born in India crossed mountains and sands, then found new expression in Chinese language, art, and daily life. Dunhuang's caves preserved art manuscripts and hidden religious worlds at the edge of the Gobi Desert near roots once. Traveled by merchants and pilgrims, generations of patron-sponsored caves filled with paintings and sculptures. These were not empty decorations. They were acts of devotion, memory, hope, and status. The walls showed Buddhas, bodhisattvas, heavenly musicians, donors, guardians, paradises, and scenes from sacred stories. Colors once glowed in the torchlight, surrounding worshippers with visions of other realms. Even more extraordinary was the sealed library cave discovered in the early 20th century. It contained tens of thousands of manuscripts, paintings, printed texts, and documents in many languages. Some were religious, others were administrative, literary, medical, or personal. Together, they reveal a world of movement and exchange. Chinese, Tibetan, Sanskrit, Sadian, Kautanazi, and other traditions left traces there. Dunhuang survived because dry desert silence protected what history might have scattered. It is a time capsule of faith on the frontier. A Diamond Sutra began the world's oldest dated printed book. This Buddhist text, printed in the 9th century, is astonishing because it shows how advanced woodblock printing had become in China. It was not a rough experiment. It was a carefully prepared scroll with elegant text and an illustration created for religious merit and wide circulation. Printing changed the reach of sacred knowledge. Instead of copying every text by hand, artisans could carve characters into wooden blocks, ink the surface, and press repeated impressions onto paper. This allowed scriptures, charms, calendars, manuals, and later many other works to circulate more efficiently. The text itself teaches about illusion, attachment, and wisdom, which makes its material form even more fascinating. A message about the fleeting nature of appearances survived precisely because technology preserved it. The printed scroll links devotion with craft. It reminds us that one of humanity's great information revolutions was driven not only by administration or profit, but by the desire to spread spiritual teaching. Woodblock printing spread knowledge long before movable type arrived. The technique required patience and precision. A page of text was written, transferred to wood, carved in reverse, inked, and pressed onto paper. Once the block was ready, it could produce many copies with remarkable consistency. This suited Chinese writing especially well because pages could combine characters, images, diagrams, and layout in one carved surface. The method helped circulate Buddhist scriptures, calendars, dictionaries, medical works, farming guides, examination materials, and popular literature. It also supported government needs since printed documents could standardize information across distance. Unlike handwritten copying, printing allowed knowledge to multiply with fewer errors. Once the book was correct, blocks could be stored and reused, turning a workshop into a reservoir of pages waiting to be reborn. The cultural impact was immense. More readers could encounter texts, more officials could study, more communities could share ritual materials. Long before printing transformed Europe, China had already discovered the power of repeatable words. By Shang invented movable type with baked clay characters. During the Song dynasty, an artisan named Bai Sheng devised a system that separated written characters into individual reusable pieces. He made them from clay, baked them, arranged them on an iron plate, printed a page, then broke the arrangement apart for later use. The idea was brilliant. Instead of carving a whole page every time, one could compose text from a stock of characters. In practice, Chinese writing presented challenges because it used thousands of characters rather than a small alphabet. For many projects, wood block printing remained more convenient. Yet Bai Sheng's invention was a remarkable conceptual leap. It showed that writing could be broken into movable units and recombined at will. Later technologies used wood metal and other materials, while movable type developed differently across cultures. His work belongs to the larger history of humanity, learning to reproduce thought mechanically. Each small clay piece was a fragment of language waiting for its next sentence. Song China had cities filled with markets and restaurants. The Song period witnessed a level of urban life that can feel startlingly modern. In cities such as Kifang and later Hangzhou, commercial energy spilled beyond older restrictions. Shops, tea houses, food stores, entertainment quarters, bookstores, inns, and specialized markets served residents and visitors. People could buy prepared meals rather than cooking at home. Menus, regional dishes, snacks, sweets, and late-night food. Culture became part of city life. This mattered because it reflects a growing money economy, dense populations, and sophisticated supply networks. Grain, fish, vegetables, spices, wine, tea, paper cloth, and luxury goods moved through urban systems with impressive speed. The city was not only a political center, it was a place to browse, taste, gossip, listen, and spend. Paintings and texts from the period show crowds, bridges, boats, fenders, and signs of constant motion. Song urban culture reminds us that the past was not always slow or simple. Song engineers built clock towers with astonishing mechanical precision. One of the most impressive machines of the age was associated with Su Song, a scholar, official, and engineer. His astronomical clock tower combined timekeeping, celestial observation, water power gears, and mechanical display. It did more than mark hours. It modeled the movement of heavenly bodies and presented time through automated figures. The mechanism used an escapement-like system which helped regulate motion and measured intervals. This was not a toy for curiosity. Accurate calendars and astronomical observations mattered to imperial legitimacy because rulers were expected to harmonize earthly government with celestial order. The tower represented science, statecraft, and craftsmanship working together. Imagine standing before a structure where flowing water-powered hidden wheels stars were tracked. Above, and mechanical figures emerged to announce the passage of time. It expressed a deep belief that the universe had patterns and that human intelligence could build instruments to follow them. Some engineering turned time into moving architecture. Chinese porcelain became so prized that Europe named it China porcelain. Begins with earth fire and extraordinary control. Chinese potters learned to refine clay bodies and fire them at high temperatures until vessels became hard, pale, resonant, and sometimes translucent. The result was unlike ordinary pottery. It could be thin yet strong, elegant yet practical, simple in form yet dazzling. In glaze, kiln centers developed specialized skills over generations, and some pieces traveled vast distances through trade. Foreign buyers admired the material so intensely that the word for the country became attached to the ware itself in English. Before Europeans learned to produce true porcelain, they collected, imitated, and treasured Chinese pieces as luxury objects. They appeared in palaces, cabinets of curiosity, dining rooms, and diplomatic exchanges. Yet porcelain was not just export glamour. It also served domestic tastes, rituals, tea culture, and daily use within China. Each bowl or vase carried the hidden mastery of mining, shaping, glazing, firing, and risk. One kiln mistake could ruin months of labor. Kaifeng hosted one of history's earliest known Jewish communities. In the Song period, a small Jewish community took root in Kaifeng, likely connected to trade routes that brought merchants and families across Asia. What makes their story so fascinating is how they preserved elements of Jewish religious life while also adapting to Chinese society. They built a synagogue, maintained scriptures, observed practices, and used Chinese names. Over generations, they became part of the local world, interacting with Confucian culture, language, dress, and administration. The history challenges simple ideas about isolation. Medieval China contained communities whose origins stretched far beyond its borders, and Kafeng became home to one of them. Later visitors were astonished to find people in China who honored ancient Israelite traditions. The community changed over time, and much was eventually lost through assimilation disaster and the fading of religious knowledge. Yet its memory remains powerful. It shows how identity can travel, settle, transform, and survive in unexpected places. Foot-binding began as elite fashion and became painful tradition. The practice is often remembered as one of the most troubling customs in Chinese history. It appears to have begun among elite circles, where tiny bound feet became associated with refinement, beauty status, and feminine desirability. Over time, the practice spread more widely, especially among Han Chinese families. Girls had their feet tightly wrapped during childhood to alter their growth, producing pain, limited mobility, and lifelong physical consequences. To understand does not mean to excuse it. Families participated because social pressure, marriage prospect, class, aspiration, and ideals of respectability could feel overwhelming. Her daughter's bound feet might be seen as a sign that she did not need field labor or that her family hoped to raise her status. The custom lasted for centuries and was later challenged by reformers, missionaries, feminists, and modernizing officials. Its history reveals how beauty standards can become systems of control. It also shows how deeply bodies can be shaped by social expectation. Rice cultivation transformed southern China into a population heartland. Southern China was once less central to early dynastic power than the north, but wet rice agriculture helped change that balance. Rice thrives in warm, watery environments, and farmers developed sophisticated methods for managing paddies, irrigation, seedlings, transplanting, and harvest cycles. This allowed dense populations to be supported from relatively small areas of land. Over centuries, migration from the north, new farming techniques, and environmental adaptation helped turn the Yangtze region and lands farther south into major centers of food production. Rice farming required cooperation because water had to be channeled, shared in timed villages, organized labor around planting and harvest. Landscapes were remade into terraces, fields, dikes, and canals. The crop shaped cuisine, settlement, taxation, and regional identity. It also helped support the growth of cities' trade and state revenue. China's center of gravity gradually shifted as the south became richer and more populous. A green changed the map of history. Kampa rice helped Song farmers harvest more than once yearly a fast-ripening variety of rice from the region of Kampa in present day. Vietnam became important in Chinese agricultural history because it matured quickly and resisted drought better than some older varieties. It allowed farmers in suitable regions to plant and harvest with greater flexibility. In some places, fields could produce more than one crop in a year that mattered enormously. More reliable harvests supported population growth, reduced certain risks of famine, and increased the economic strength of southern regions. The spread of Kampa rice also shows that agricultural innovation often crosses borders. China was not simply exporting culture and goods, it was also learning from neighbors and adapting useful discoveries to local needs. Farmers, officials, and communities all played roles in making the new crop valuable. Behind the history of dynasties and armies lies this quieter revolution. A small seed introduced from the south helped feed millions and sustain one of the most dynamic economies of the medieval world. Neo-Confucian thinkers reshaped family education and moral life. During the Song dynasty, scholars reinterpreted older Confucian teachings in response to Buddhism, Taoism, and the needs of a changing society. Thinkers such as Zhu Zi developed a powerful system that connected ethics, self-cultivation, metaphysics, education, and social order. They asked how people could become morally refined, how families should be governed, and how the patterns of the universe related to human conduct. Their answers became deeply influential. Reading, reflection, discipline, ritual, and proper relationships were treated as pathways toward moral clarity. Family life gained renewed ideological importance, especially through ancestor rites, hierarchy, and education. Schools and academies spread these teachings, and later governments made them central to examination culture. The result shaped generations of officials and households across East Asia. Neo-Confucianism could inspire sincere self-improvement, but it could also reinforce rigid social expectations. Its influence endured because it offered more than rules. It offered a complete vision of how the South family state and cosmos might fit together. The Mongols conquered China and founded the Yuan dynasty. The conquest was one of the most traumatic turning points in Chinese history. Steppe armies famous for mobility, archery, discipline, and strategy gradually overcame powerful states and incorporated China into a vast Mongol-ruled empire. The process took decades and involved sieges, alliances, naval campaigns, administrative adaptation, and immense suffering. When the Yuan dynasty was established, China became part of a wider imperial system stretching across much of Eurasia. This brought new connections, new hierarchies, and new tensions. Mongol rulers had to govern a huge sedentary population with sophisticated institutions, while also preserving their own elite identity. They employed people from many backgrounds, including Central Asians and other foreigners, in official roles. For Chinese subjects, the period could feel alien and unequal, yet it also intensified long-distance contact. The Yuan dynasty reveals a world in which China was ruled from within by conquerors from beyond the old frontier. It was defeat, transformation, and global connection all at once. Kublai Khan ruled China from a newly built capital. He chose the site that would become Beijing as the center of his rule, building a capital known as Dadu in Chinese and Kambalic to many foreigners. This was more than a practical decision. It was a statement about power. Kublai Khan wanted to rule as a Mongol great Khan and as a Chinese emperor. The new capital stood near the steppe frontier, which helped connect the worlds of nomadic power and Chinese administration. Its planning drew on Chinese urban traditions while serving the needs of a cosmopolitan empire. Officials, soldiers, artisans, envoys, merchants, monks, and travelers passed through its gates. From there, Kublai governed a round that linked East Asia with the wider Mongol world. The city became a place where languages, religions, and political expectations met under intense pressure. Later dynasties would build upon Beijing's importance. Kublai's capital helped turn the northern city into one of the great centers of world history. Marco Polo described Chinese cities that astonished medieval Europe. When accounts associated with Marco Polo reached European audiences, they offered descriptions of wealth-scale administration and urban life that seemed almost unbelievable. He spoke of great cities, busy markets, paper money, postal stations, coal, luxurious palaces, and regions dense with trade. Whether every detail came exactly from his own eyes has been debated, but the impact of the narrative was enormous. Europe at the time knew little about the full complexity of East Asia. Stores of China under Mongol rule expanded the European imagination. They suggested a world of cities larger and richer than many at home, governed through systems unfamiliar to Western readers. His descriptions helped feed curiosity about Asia for generations. They did not create contact by themselves, but they contributed to a growing desire to reach the sources of spices, silk, wealth, and wonder. The power of the tale lies in its astonishment. It made distant China feel both real and almost impossible. Yu and drama gave ordinary voices, a stage in Chinese culture under Mongol rule. Some traditional paths for educated elites changed, and theater gained new energy as a form of expression. Yu and drama combined music, spoken dialogue, poetry, humor, emotion, and social observation. Its stories could involve wronged widows, clever servants, corrupt officials, lovers, judges, ghosts, and outcasts. This made the stage a place where audiences encountered lives beyond courtly polish. Playwrights could explore injustice and desire in ways that formal official writing often avoided. The language was more accessible than highly classical prose, which gave performances emotional immediacy. Some works from the period remain famous because they speak with sharp human force. A person crushed by bureaucracy could demand recognition. A woman's grief could become the center of the story. A low-status character could expose the foolishness of the powerful Yuan drama matters because it widened range of voices preserved in Chinese culture. It turned entertainment into a vessel for social memory. The Red Turban Rebellion helped end Mongol rule in China. By the 14th century, the Yuan dynasty faced floods, famine, disease, financial strain, factional conflict, and widespread resentment. In this atmosphere, religious movements and rebel armies gained strength. The Red Turbans drew on millenarian Buddhist beliefs and popular anger, promising renewal in a world that seemed broken. Their uprising spread through regions already suffering from hardship and mistrust of Mongol rule. Among the men who rose through this violent landscape was Zhu Wanzhang, a former poor peasant and Buddhist novice, who joined rebel forces and proved to be a remarkable commander. Over time, he defeated rivals and positioned himself as the restorer of Chinese rule. The rebellion was not a simple patriotic movement from the beginning. It was messy, local, spiritual, desperate, and ambitious. Yet it became part of the collapse of the Yuan order. Out of hunger, prophecy, and war came a new dynasty. The fall of Mongol rule was born from suffering as much as strategy. The Ming dynasty rebuilt Chinese power after Mongol domination. When Mongol rule collapsed, the new dynasty faced a task larger than taking the throne. It had to restore confidence in Chinese rule after decades of foreign domination, warfare, and disruption. The founding emperor Zhu Wanzhang came from extreme poverty and understood hardship with unusual sharpness. His government promoted agriculture, repaired institutions, and tried to anchor society in Naija, discipline, hierarchy, and rural stability. The early Ming state could be harsh, suspicious, and intensely controlled, but it also revived a sense of imperial order. New laws were issued, military colonies guarded frontiers, tax registers counted households and fields. Ceremonies were redesigned to present the ruler as the moral center of the realm. The dynasty's rise is astonishing because it came from rebellion and deprivation, yet built a system that lasted for centuries. It shows how a shattered country could be pulled back into shape by ambition, fear, planning, and a fierce desire to begin again. Yung Herd commanded treasure fleets larger than European ships. In the early 15th century, a Muslim court eunuch from Yunnan became the Anyanai admiral of one of history's most spectacular maritime enterprises, Jan. He led enormous fleets across the Indian Ocean, carrying envoys, soldiers, translators, doctors, craftsmen, and luxury goods. The largest ships were said to be immense by the standards of their age, dwarfing many European vessels that would later cross the Atlantic. These voyages were not simple exploration. They displayed imperial power, gathered tribute, managed diplomacy, and projected Ming authority into a wider oceanic world. Ports from Southeast Asia to South Asia and beyond saw Chinese ships arrive with ceremony and force. The fleets carried silk, porcelain, copper coins, and official messages. They returned with rare animals, exotic products, and foreign envoys. Zhang He's command required navigation, logistics, discipline, and political trust on a breathtaking scale. For a brief moment, China placed a floating empire on the seas. Ming voyages reached East Africa before Columbus crossed the Atlantic. Decades before Europeans entered the Atlantic Age of Conquest, Chinese fleets were already crossing the Indian Ocean to distant ports. Ming expeditions reached the Swahili coast of East Africa, where trading cities connected the continent with Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. For Chinese observers, these places offered unfamiliar animals, goods, languages, and customs. One famous giraffe brought back to court was interpreted by some as a qilin, an auspicious creature from Chinese tradition. That moment captures the wonder and misunderstanding of long-distance contact. The voyages were not attempts at permanent overseas colonization in the later European style. They were diplomatic missions wrapped in spectacle, backed by naval strength and imperial prestige. Their reach shows that China possessed the knowledge and resources to move across oceans on a grand scale. Then the program faded. Court priorities shifted, costs mattered, and northern threats demanded attention. A maritime opening narrowed, leaving one of history's great unanswered questions behind. Blue and white porcelain became a global luxury under the Ming. The beauty of these vessels came from a marriage of Chinese craftsmanship and foreign material. Cobalt pigment, often associated with trade from Western Asia, created deep blue designs beneath clear glaze. When fired at high temperatures, the blue settled into luminous patterns of dragons, flowers, waves, vines, clouds, and symbolic scenes. The result traveled everywhere. Bowls, jars, dishes, and vases moved through Asian ports, Islamic courts, African trading networks, and eventually European collections. People who could not read Chinese still recognized the elegance of the surface. In many places, local potters tried to imitate it, creating new artistic traditions from admiration and desire. The porcelain was not just beautiful, it was durable, transportable, and instantly recognizable as a prestige object. Each piece carried evidence of mining, painting, glazing, firing, packing, sailing, bargaining, and collecting. A single dish could connect a kiln in Jingzhen to a banquet table thousands of miles away. The Yongle Emperor moved the capital permanently to Beijing. This decision reshaped the political geography of China. The early Ming capital had been in Nanjing, a great city in the south with deep economic advantages. The Yongle Emperor, however, had strong ties to the north, where he had once ruled as a prince. By establishing Beijing as the imperial center, he placed the court closer to the frontier and to the military concerns that haunted the dynasty. The move required massive construction, the transfer of officials, and the reorganization of supply lines. Grain had to flow north in huge quantities, which made transport systems vital to imperial survival. Beijing's position carried a message: the emperor would face the steppe world, directly, not governed from a distant southern comfort. This was practical and symbolic at the same time. A capital became a statement of vigilance, ambition, and legitimacy. From that decision, Beijing's role as China's political heart became one of the defining facts of later history. The Forbidden City took vast armies of workers to complete building the palace complex, required an empire's worth of resources. Timber came from distant forests, including giant logs transported with immense difficulty over rivers, roads, and winter ice. Stone was quarried and dragged toward the capital. Bricks were specially fired, tiles were glazed, and craftsmen shaped beams, gates, carvings, roofs, drains, courtyards, and ceremonial spaces. The labor force included artisans, soldiers, conscripted workers, engineers, and officials, responsible for coordinating an almost unimaginable project. What emerged was not merely a group of buildings. It was a lauded world designed for ritual, hierarchy, secrecy, and display. The scale can make the human effort disappear, but every polished step and painted beam carried the strain of hands and bodies. The project expressed imperial magnificence, yet it also depended on taxes, commands, transport, and hardship far from the throne. Its grandeur was built from both artistry and obedience. The tension still lingers behind its red walls and golden roofs. Imperial Beijing was planned as a map of cosmic order. The city was not arranged casually. Its layout reflected ideas about authority, direction, ritual, and the proper relationship between heaven, ruler, and earth. The imperial palace stood on a central axis that organized space with striking discipline. Gates, halls, courtyards, altars, and processional routes created a sense that political power belonged to a larger universal pattern. The emperor did not simply live in the capital, he occupied its symbolic center. Movement through the city could become a journey through rank and meaning. Important structures were placed according to principles that linked urban design with cosmology and state ritual. This made architecture part of government. A visitor approaching the throne moved through layers of control and expectation before reaching the heart of authority. The message was clear without needing to be spoken. The empire had a center. The center had a ruler. The ruler stood between the human world and the order of the skies. The temple of heaven linked emperors to celestial responsibility. In this sacred complex, the ruler performed ceremonies that expressed one of the deepest ideas in Chinese kingship. The emperor was responsible not only for laws and armies, but for harmony between heaven and the human world. At appointed times, he would pray for good harvests and offer sacrifice with carefully controlled ritual precision. The architecture itself carried meaning. Circular and square forms evoked traditional associations with heaven and earth. Blue tiles suggested the sky. Open spaces made the ceremonies feel exposed to a power beyond the court. These rites were politically important because famine, flood, or disorder could be read as signs that the ruler had failed morally. No emperor could fully control the weather, yet he was expected to answer for the Rome's balance. That expectation is astonishing. It placed cosmic pressure upon a human monarch. The Temple of Heaven was not only beautiful, it was the stage where imperial responsibility became visible under the sky. Ming tombs turned mountain landscapes into royal afterlife architecture north of Beijing. Emperors were buried in a carefully chosen valley framed by hills. The site was selected according to principles that connected landscape protection energy and dynastic dignity. Approaching the tombs, visitors passed along a spirit road, lined with stone animals, officials, and guardians. These figures created a ceremonial passage between the living court and the royal dead. Each tomb complex expressed the continuing status of the emperor beyond death. Gates, holes, mounds, walls, and underground chambers turned burial into political theater. The mountains were not background. They were part of the design, enclosing and dignifying the sacred space. What makes the tombs fascinating is the way they extend imperial order into the afterlife. Even death did not release the ruler from hierarchy, ritual, or architecture. A dynasty built resting places, but were also statements of permanence in stone and earth. The Ming court tried to make sovereignty endure beyond the last breath. The late Ming world was shaken by silver from abroad as global trade expanded. Huge flows of silver entered China from Japan and the Spanish Americas. This metal became central to taxation and commerce. Farmers, merchants, officials, and soldiers all felt its influence because payments were increasingly tied to silver values. At first, the system could energize markets. Chinese goods were highly desired, especially silk and porcelain, and foreign silver helped pay for them. But dependence on silver also created vulnerability. When supplies fluctuated or values shifted, local economies could suffer. Taxes became harder to pay, rural stress deepened, fiscal pressure added to problems caused by climate, corruption, military costs, and rebellion. This story is mind-bending because events in American mines and Pacific trade could affect villages in China. The late Ming economy was not sealed inside its borders. It was entangled with a widening world. A metal dug from distant mountains helped shape the fate of a dynasty. Jesuit scholars brought European astronomy into the Chinese court. When Jesuit missionaries arrived in China, they understood that learning could open doors that preaching alone could not. They brought mathematical astronomy, clocks, maps, instruments, and methods for predicting eclipses with impressive precision. Chinese officials cared deeply about the calendar because it was tied to imperial authority and ritual order. If foreign experts could improve calculations, the court had reason to listen. Jesuits learned Chinese, studied elite culture, and presented themselves as scholars rather than ordinary outsiders. Their presence created moments of remarkable exchange. European astronomy entered court debates, while missionaries encountered Chinese traditions of observation and statecraft. This was not a simple story of one side teaching the other. It was negotiation, adaptation, admiration, suspicion, and politics. Scientific knowledge became a bridge, but also a source of tension. The court wanted useful expertise. Missionaries hoped for spiritual influence between them. The stars became part of diplomacy on Earth. The Taya Ricci impressed Chinese officials with maps and clocks. Ricci understood that curiosity could be more persuasive than confrontation. He dressed as a scholar, mastered literary Chinese, and entered elite circles through patience, manners, and learning. His world map astonished many Chinese viewers because it placed China within a much larger global geography. The map challenged assumptions without directly insulting them. It showed oceans, continents, kingdoms, and distances that widened the imagination. Mechanical clocks also fascinated officials because they seemed to make time visible through hidden motion. Ricci used such objects as introductions to conversation. But his deeper achievement was cultural translation. He searched for terms that could express Christian ideas in language educated Chinese readers would respect. He built friendships with officials who valued mathematics, astronomy, and moral discussion. His life shows that encounter between civilizations often depends on individuals who can move carefully between worlds. Ricci did not conquer with armies. He entered through maps, mechanisms, memory, and conversation. The Manchus conquered Beijing and founded the Qing dynasty. The fall of the Ming did not come in a clean handover. From one dynasty to the next, rebellion, famine, military crisis, and political collapse opened the gates to a new power from the northeast. The Manchus had built a formidable state before entering China proper. They organized military and social life through the banner system, forged alliances, adopted Chinese administrative methods, and presented themselves as legitimate rulers. When Beijing fell to rebel forces, a Ming general allowed Manchu armies through the Great War to defeat them. That decision changed history. The new dynasty had to rule a massive Han Chinese population while preserving Manchu identity. He'd use both adaptation and command. Officials kept many familiar institutions, but conquest was never forgotten. Hairstyles, loyalty tests, and military occupation marked the transition. The Qing state became one of China's most powerful empires yet. Its beginning was born from crisis. At a moment when the old order was already breaking apart, Kangxi ruled longer than almost any emperor in Chinese history. His reign became one of the defining periods of the Qing dynasty. Coming to the throne as a child, he grew into a ruler known for energy, intelligence, and personal discipline. He studied classical learning, military affairs, languages, and practical government. During his long reign, the dynasty consolidated control, defeated major rebellions, managed frontier campaigns, and worked to present Manchu rule as legitimate within Chinese political tradition. She also showed curiosity toward European science and Jesuit learning, especially mathematics and astronomy. Yet he was no passive patron. He traveled, inspected, judged, commanded, and wrote his image as a learned and active monarch helped stabilize a conquest dynasty that still needed acceptance. Longevity itself became politically powerful because generations grew up knowing no other ruler. A reign that lasts decades can shape memory as much as policy. Kangxi's rule gave the king a sense of durability, and his reputation became a standard. Later emperors tried to inherit. Qianlong presided over vast expansion and glittering court culture. The 18th century Qing Empire reached one of its greatest territorial heights under Qianlong. Military campaigns extended influence across Inner Asia while the court celebrated itself through art collecting, poetry ceremony, and historical projects. Qianlong was an emperor intensely aware of image. He presented himself as warrior, sage, patron, poet, Buddhist ruler, and guardian of tradition. His court gathered paintings, bronzes, jades, manuscripts, and rare objects on an enormous scale. At the same time, expansion demanded money, armies, logistics, and administration across very different peoples and landscapes. The brilliance of the period can be dazzling, but it also contains strains. Later in the reign, corruption grew, costs mounted, and confidence sometimes hardened into complacency. That contrast makes Qianlong fascinating. He ruled over splendor and power, but also over the beginnings of problems that later became harder to ignore. His age was a high plateau. From such heights, decline can be difficult to see. China grew to include Tibet, Xinjiang, and Mongolia. The Qing Empire was not simply China in a narrow cultural sense. It was a vast multi-ethnic imperial formation. Manchu rulers governed different regions through different systems using banners, local elites, religious patronage, military garrisons, and administrative officers according to circumstance. In Mongolia, alliances and control were shaped through noble lineages and Tibetan Buddhist connections. In Tibet, Qing influence developed through patronage, protection, and political intervention. In Xinjiang, conquest brought oasis cities, steplands, and Muslim communities under imperial authority. This diversity challenges the idea of a single uniform empire. The king court ruled as Confucian monarchs to many, Chinese subjects as steppe khans to others, and as Buddhist patrons in inner Asian contexts. Its power depended on flexibility as well as force. The method created has had lasting consequences. Many modern debates about territory identity and history trace back to this period when the empire expanded across frontiers of language, religion, and ecology. The imperial archive recorded millions of petitions, judgments, and reports. Behind the drama of emperors and battles stood a mountain of paperwork. The Chinese imperial state depended on written communication flowing between counties, provinces, ministries, and the throne. Officials reported harvest conditions, criminal cases, tax matters, appointments, disasters, construction projects, rebellions, and local disputes. Petitions moved upward, edicts moved downward. Memorials could carry polished arguments, urgent warnings, or careful attempts to avoid blame. This bureaucratic record is one of the great wonders of Chinese history because it brings the machinery of government into view. A drought in a village, a theft in a market, a riverbank repair, or a magistrate's failure could become part of an official paper trail. The archive reveals a state trying to see itself across immense distances. It also reveals the limits of that vision. Reports could be delayed, softened, exaggerated, or shaped by fear. Still, the sheer scale of documentation shows a civilization that governed through ink as much as through armies. Court painters blended Chinese brushwork with European perspective techniques in the king court. Art became a place where different visual worlds met. Some European missionaries were skilled painters, and they introduced techniques of shading, depth, anatomical modeling, and linear perspective. Chinese court artists had their own powerful traditions built around brush line, symbolic composition, texture, and the expressive movement of ink under imperial patronage. These approaches sometimes merged portraits, could show rulers with a sense of volume influenced by European methods while still preserving Chinese conventions of dignity and rank. Battle scenes, palace views, animals, and ceremonial images might combine careful detail with unfamiliar spatial effects. This blending was not always equal or simple. Court taste guided what was accepted, and foreign techniques were adapted to imperial needs. The result can feel surprisingly modern, not because it abandoned tradition, but because it absorbed new tools. In these paintings, diplomacy, science, religion, and aesthetics all meet quietly on silk and paper. Peking opera grew from regional performances, international theater. Its rise began when performance traditions from different regions came together in the capital. Troupes brought distinctive melodies, stories, gestures, and vocal styles, then gradually shaped a theatrical form that became closely associated with Beijing. Peking opera is not realistic theater in the ordinary sense. It is coded, stylized, and intensely disciplined. A sleeve movement can suggest emotion. A few steps can indicate a long journey. Painted faces reveal character types, loyalties, and temperaments. Music, percussion, singing, speech, acrobatics, costume, and gesture work together as a complete language. Audiences learn to read this language with pleasure and precision. The repertoire drew from history, legend, romance, crime, loyalty, and supernatural tales. Its power lies in compression. A bare stage can become a battlefield, a palace, a mountain road, or a prison. By turning convention into imagination, Peking opera made Chinese. Historical memories sing, leap, fight, mourn, and shimmer under lantern light. The Opium Wars forced China into unequal treaties with foreign powers in the 19th century. Conflict over trade, sovereignty, and opium erupted into wars that exposed the King state's military vulnerability. British merchants wanted access to Chinese markets, while opium smuggling created a Qin silver outflow and official alarm. When Chinese authorities tried to suppress the trade, confrontation escalated. Steam-powered warships, naval guns, and different military systems gave Britain a decisive advantage. The resulting treaties opened ports, fixed identities, granted privileges to foreign powers, and weakened Chinese control over parts of its own legal and commercial environment. Later conflicts deepened the pattern. These events were shocking because they overturned older assumptions about China's position in the world. The empire that had long treated foreign trade as something to manage at its edges now faced industrial powers demanding entry by force. The consequences shaped Chinese politics for generations. Humiliation, reform, resistance, nationalism, and revolution all drew energy from the wounds open. During this era, Hong Kong became British after the First Opium War. The island's transfer was part of the settlement that followed China's defeat by Britain in the early 1840s. At the time, Hong Kong was not yet the dense global city later known to the world. Its deep harbor and strategic position made it valuable to British commercial and naval interests. Under colonial rule, it grew into a major port linking China, Southeast Asia, and global trade routes. Warehouses, docks, banks, courts, missionary institutions, newspapers, and migrant communities reshaped the landscape. Chinese residents came for work, refuge, and opportunity, while colonial authorities governed through systems that mixed British law with local realities. Hong Kong's history became distinct from that of the mainland, yet always tied to it by migration, commerce, language, and politics. Its origin in war made it a symbol of foreign intrusion for many Chinese people. At the same time, its later growth created a city with a unique and complicated identity. The Taiping Rebellion became one of history's deadliest civil wars. This catastrophe tore through mid-19th century China on a scale that is difficult to absorb. It began with the religious movement LED by Hong Dingkun, who believed he had a divine mission and claimed a sacred connection to Christianity in a highly unusual form. His followers created the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, captured Nanjing, and challenged king rule for more than a decade. The conflict spread across rich and densely populated regions, bringing sieges, massacres, famine, disease, forced recruitment, and social breakdown. Tens of millions may have died from violence and the disasters that followed in its path. The rebellion was not just a military event. It was a crisis of belief, class, ethnicity, governance, and survival. Local militias rose, regional commanders gained power. The king survived, but the state was permanently weakened. The scale of suffering makes the Taiping Rebellion one of the most devastating upheavals in human history, yet many outside China barely know its name. A failed scholar claimed a heavenly mission and shook China. Hong Dingkun's path began with disappointment. He repeatedly failed the civil service examinations, the very system that promised status through learning after illness, visions, and contact with Christian writings. He came to believe that he had been chosen to destroy demons and renew the world. His message found followers among marginalized communities, especially in regions burdened by poverty, social tension, and ethnic friction. What might sound at first like one man's strange private conviction became a revolutionary movement with armies, laws, rituals, and a capital. The Taiping vision attacked the king hoarder and rejected many familiar practices. It promoted radical religious and social ideas, although reality inside the movement was often harsh and contradictory. Hong's story is gripping because it shows how personal failure can become historical explosion when it meets a society on the strain. One disappointed examination candidate helped unleash a war that changed the fate of an empire. The self-strengthening movement sought Western tools without Western rule. After defeats by foreign powers and internal rebellions, some king officials argued that China had to learn selected technologies from the West while preserving its own moral and political foundations. They promoted arsenal shipyards, translation schools, foreign language training, military modernization, and industrial projects. The slogan often associated with the movement suggested Chinese learning as the essence with Western learning. For practical use, that balance was difficult. Buying machines was easier than transforming institutions. New weapons required new training, supply systems, command structures, and funding. Shipyards needed technical knowledge and long-term support. Reformers faced conservative suspicion, the bureaucratic rivalry, and regional fragmentation. Still, the movement matters because it was an early attempt to answer a painful question. How could an old civilization survive in a world of industrial empires without losing itself? The answer remaining complete but the effort marked a turning point. China's future could no longer be imagined without modern technology. The Summer Palace was rebuilt after devastating foreign attacks. The Imperial Garden northwest of Beijing became a symbol of beauty loss and political contradiction. Earlier palace grounds in the area were ravaged by foreign forces in the 19th century, leaving a wound in Chinese cultural memory. Later, the Summer Palace was rebuilt and expanded around Kunming Lake and Longevity Hill. It offered pavilions, painted corridors, bridges, temples, gardens, and carefully framed views. The place could feel serene, but its history was entangled with crisis. Funds associated with naval modernization were reportedly diverted in connection with its reconstruction, which later critics saw as a sign of court misjudgment. During a time of national danger, Empress Dowager 60 became closely linked with the site. To walk there is to encounter elegance, shadowed by vulnerability. The garden shows how imperial culture could create extraordinary beauty, even as the state struggled against foreign pressure, fiscal weakness, and demands for reform. It is both refuge and reminder. The Boxer Uprising revealed anger at missionaries and foreign influence. At the end of the 19th century, groups known to foreigners as Boxers emerged in northern China amid drought, poverty, social unrest, and resentment toward foreign intrusion. They practiced martial rituals and believed they could gain spiritual protection against bullets. Their anger focused on Christian missionaries, Chinese converts, and foreign powers that had gained privileges through treaties. The Qing court hesitated, divided between suppression and support, before parts of the government aligned with the uprising. The crisis escalated into attacks on foreigners and Christians, then a military invasion by an international alliance. Beijing was occupied, and China was forced to accept a punishing settlement. The uprising is fascinating because it was not simply irrational violence, as foreign accounts often claimed. It grew from real grievances, fear, cultural disruption, and humiliation. It had also brought terrible consequences for many innocent people. The Boxer crisis revealed how combustible China had become under the pressure of empire, religion, rumor, and desperation. The Qing dynasty fell after more than 2 centuries. By the early 20th century, the dynasty faced problems too large for old methods to contain. Foreign pressure, military defeats, financial strain, population growth, natural disasters, reform movements, revolutionary networks, and anger at Manchu rule all weakened the imperial structure. The court attempted late reforms, including new schools, military modernization, and plans for constitutional government. That reforms raised expectations faster than they restored trust. Provincial elites, students, merchants, soldiers, and overseas Chinese communities increasingly imagined alternatives to monarchy. In 1911, an uprising in Wuchang triggered the chain reaction. Provinces declared independence from Qing authority, and appreciations followed. The last emperor, still a child, abdicated. The next year, a system that had lasted in different forms for more than 2,000 years came to an end with a document rather than a final heroic battle. The fall was both sudden and long prepared. It closed the imperial age and opened a republic full of uncertainty. Sun Yat-sen helped turn imperial China into a republic. He became one of the central figures in the movement to replace monarchy with a modern nation-state, trained in part through Western education and shaped by experiences in China and abroad. Sun built revolutionary networks among students, overseas Chinese secret societies, and reform-minded supporters. His ideas called for nationalism, people's rights, and people's livelihood, often summarized as 3 principles. He was not always present at every decisive moment, and many uprisings connected to his movement failed. Yet his symbolic importance grew because he gave the revolution the language of renewal. He imagined China not as an empire ruled by a dynasty, but as a nation belonging to its people. After the Qing collapse, he briefly became provisional president before yielding power in hopes of unity. His life was filled with exile, fundraising, plotting, disappointment, and persistence. Sun's achievement was not simple victory. It was helping make the end of empire thinkable. The last emperor was still a child when he abdicated. Pui came to the throne, as a small boy surrounded by rituals he could not truly understand. He was treated as the son of heaven, yet adults managed the crisis closing around him. When the Qing dynasty ended, he abdicated before he was old enough to grasp the meaning of losing an empire. Even after abdication, he was allowed to remain for a time inside the former imperial palace, living in a strange afterlife of monarchy within a republic. Servants still bowed, ceremonies continued in reduced form. Outside the walls, China was changing with astonishing speed. Puyi's later life became even more improbable. He was expelled from the palace, manipulated by Japanese imperial ambitions, installed as ruler of Manchukuo, imprisoned after the war, and eventually lived as an ordinary citizen under communist core rule. Historians almost cinematic one life passed from divine childhood to political puppet to re-educated man, mirroring China's shattered 20th century. Warlords fractured China after the republic replaced the empire. The fall of the dynasty did not automatically create a strong republic. Power slipped into the hands of military leaders who controlled regions, armies, taxes, railways, and local administrations. Some claimed loyalty to the republic while acting as independent rulers. Alliances formed and collapsed with dizzying speed. Beijing governments often lacked real authority beyond negotiation and military pressure. Ordinary people paid the price through taxation, conscription, banditry, inflation, and insecurity. Yet the warlord era was not only chaos, it was also a time of experimentation, regional reform, urban growth, student activism, new publishing, and competing visions of China's future. The old imperial center had vanished, but no single national authority had fully replaced it. This made the country politically fragmented while intellectually restless. The question became urgent: who had the right to reunify China, and what kind of China should be built? The struggle over that answer shaped the decades that followed. A May 4th movement challenged old traditions with new ideas. In 1919, students in Beijing poured into the streets after learning that foreign powers planned to transfer German rights in Shandong to Japan rather than return them to China. What began as protest against diplomatic betrayal became something larger. Young intellectuals asked why their country had become vulnerable, and many turned their anger toward old habits of thought. They criticized rigid hierarchy, arranged marriage, classical education, and political weakness. Journals, classrooms, speeches, and demonstrations filled with arguments about science, democracy, language, gender, and national survival. Writers promoted vernacular Chinese so literature could reach more people. Students imagined a new society that could stand with modern nations without losing its soul. The movement did not speak with a single voice. Some looked toward liberal reform, others toward socialism, and others toward cultural renewal. Its power came from urgency. A generation decided that saving China required not only new leaders, but new ways of thinking. Shanghai became a dazzling city of jazz, cinema, and commerce. By the early 20th century, Shanghai had become one of the most electrifying cities in the world. Its streets held banks, department stores, newspapers, nightclubs, theaters, factories, docks, and foreign concessions. With their own legal systems, wealth and hardship stood close together. A person could hear jazz in a ballroom, watch a silent film, read a radical magazine, and pass. Exhausted workers leaving a textile mill. The city drew migrants from the countryside and entrepreneurs from overseas. It became a laboratory of modern Chinese culture, where advertising, fashion, literature, photography, and cinema all developed with startling speed. Women appeared on magazine covers as symbols of modern life, while activists debated labor rights and national dignity. Shanghai's glamour had shadows, including crime, exploitation, and political violence. That is what makes it so fascinating. It was not merely elegant, it was restless. It showed China entering modernity through neon smoke, ambition, music, and contradiction. Long March became a founding legend of Chinese communism. In the 1930s, communist forces facing encirclement by nationalist armies broke out from their southern base and began a brutal retreat across mountains, rivers, grasslands, and hostile territories. The journey was filled with hunger, disease, exhaustion, combat, and confusion. Many who started did not survive, yet the survivors turned the ordeal into a powerful story of endurance and revolutionary destiny. The march helped Mao Zedong rise in authority within the communist movement, and later accounts made it a central myth of sacrifice and legitimacy. Some episodes became famous, including dangerous river crossings and the passage through remote regions where supplies were scarce. The historical details are complex, and later propaganda polished the story into heroic form. Still, the event's importance is undeniable. It gave the movement a shared memory of suffering overcome. In political storytelling, hardship can become proof. The Long March became proof that a defeated army could survive, reorganize, and one day return stronger. Xi'an incident forced rivals to face Japan together. In 1936, Chiang Kai-shek flew to Xi'an to pressure regional commanders into fighting the communists instead of prioritizing resistance to Japan. Then the situation turned astonishing. He was detained by his own generals, including Jiang Zhenyuan, who believed China had to unite against the growing Japanese threat. For days, the country waited in uncertainty. Would Chiang be killed, released, or forced into a new political arrangement? Negotiators, including communist representatives, worked toward a settlement. The result helped create a united front against Japan, although distrust between nationalists and communists never disappeared. The incident is gripping because it shows history pivoting through personal danger. Leader accustomed to command found himself a captive. Rivals suddenly needed one another. The Japanese threat made civil conflict seem unbearable, at least temporarily. Xi'an did not heal China's divisions, but it changed the order of priorities. Survival against invasion became the urgent question before all others. The Nanjing Massacre left the wounds still remembered across China. When Japanese troops captured Nanjing in 1937, the city suffered one of the most traumatic atrocities of the war. Civilians and disarmed soldiers were killed in large numbers, while many women endured sexual violence. Homes were looted, families were shattered, and terror spread through a city that had once been the nationalist capital. A group of foreigners established a safety zone that sheltered many residents, leaving diaries and records that later helped document the horror. The memory remains deeply painful because it is not only about death, but about humiliation, helplessness, and the struggle to make the world acknowledge what happened. Survivors carried stories that families repeated for generations. Museums, memorial ceremonies, and public education have kept the event central to modern Chinese memory. It also continues to affect relations between China and Japan. Some wounds are historical, but not distant. They remain present because they touch grief, justice, and national identity. Wartime Chongqing endured years of bombing and resistance after the nationalist government retreated inland. Chongqing became China's wartime capital. Its mountain setting and position along the Yangtze gave it strategic importance, but they did not spare it from danger. Japanese aircraft bombed the city repeatedly over several years, targeting the political heart of resistance and trying to break civilian morale. Residents crowded into tunnels and shelters. Sirens warned of raids, fires, collapsed buildings. Smoke and panic became part of daily life. Yet the city continued to function. Officials worked, diplomats arrived, factories moved inland, and newspapers tried to keep public spirit alive. Chongqing became a symbol of endurance under pressure. Its wartime story is different from battlefield heroism because it centers on survival inside a battered city. People cooked, waited, mourned, rebuilt, and returned to routines while danger came from the sky. Resistance was not only carried by soldiers at the front, it also lived in civilians who refused to disappear. The People's Republic of China was proclaimed in Beijing on October 1, 1949. Mao Zedong stood at Tiananmen and announced the founding of a new state. The moment followed years of civil war, Japanese invasion, revolution, inflation, displacement, and political exhaustion. For supporters, it represented liberation, unity, and the end of foreign humiliation. For others, it marked defeat, flight, fear, or the beginning of a very different kind of control. The nationalist government retreated to Taiwan, leaving the mainland under communist rule. The new leadership faced enormous challenges. It had to rebuild a war-damaged country, restore order, transform land ownership, manage cities, control inflation, and define China's place in a divided Cold War world. The ceremony in Beijing was therefore more than a declaration. It was an attempt to close one era and claim the future. The sound of that proclamation carried across a country weary from decades of conflict. A new China had begun, but its meaning was still unfolding. Land reform transformed villages through upheaval and redistribution. In the early years of communist rule, rural China underwent one of the most dramatic social changes in its history. Landlords were denounced, estates were confiscated, and fields were redistributed to poor peasants. For many villagers who had lived under debt, rent, and dependency, the promise of land carried enormous emotional force. Meetings were held where old grievances were spoken aloud, sometimes with intense anger. The process could bring genuine relief to some families, but it also involved humiliation, violence, and executions. In many places, village hierarchies were overturned, and people learned. The politics now reached deep into local life. Land reform was not simply an economic policy. It changed who could speak, who feared whom, and who claimed moral authority. It helped the new state gain port among peasants, while destroying older rural elites. The village became a stage where revolution was made. Personal fields changed hands, and so did power. The Great Leap Forward sought rapid change with disastrous results. In the late 1950s, China attempted to accelerate into communism through mass mobilization, collective farming, and backyard steel production. Communes reorganized rural life. Dining halls changed household routines, and officials reported wildly inflated harvests under pressure to show success. Grain procurement continued based on false figures, leaving many communities with too little food. Labor was diverted into ambitious projects, while farming decisions were often shaped by ideology rather than experience. The result was catastrophic famine. Tens of millions died from starvation, disease, and related hardship. The tragedy was worsened by fear, misinformation, punishment, and the difficulty of admitting failure in a highly politicized system. What makes this episode so sobering is the gap between the promised future and the human cost. It was meant to prove that willpower could overcome material limits. Instead, it showed how dangerous policy becomes when truth cannot travel upward. The countryside paid the terrible price. The Cultural Revolution sent shockwaves through schools, families, and temples. Beginning in the mid-1960s, Mao called for a struggle against supposed enemies within the party and society. Young Red Guards attacked teachers, officials, intellectuals, religious sites, books, artworks, and family histories. Schools closed or descended into political chaos. Public humiliations became common. Old friendships fractured under pressure to prove revolutionary loyalty. Parents and children could become afraid of one another's words. Temples, graves, manuscripts, and cultural objects were damaged or destroyed because they were labeled remnants of old thinking. The movement later expanded into factional violence, military intervention, forced labor, and the sending of urban youth to rural areas. For some participants, it began as idealism or rebellion against authority. For many victims, it became years of fear and loss. Its impact was so deep because it entered private life as well as public institutions. It made politics impossible to ignore. A slogan on the wall could change a career, a family, or a life. Ancient relics were hidden by ordinary people during political turmoil. During periods of upheaval, survival sometimes depended on secrecy. When campaigns threatened old books, temple objects, family genealogies, paintings, ritual vessels, or ancestral tablets, some people quietly protected what they could. They hid objects on the floors, inside walls, in locked chests, behind false surfaces, or in remote village spaces. These acts could be dangerous because preserving the wrong thing might be seen as political disobedience. Yet many did it anyway. A teacher might save a manuscript. A monk might conceal a statue. A family might bury records of its lineage until safer times returned. Not every object survived, and much was lost forever. Still, the pieces that did survive often owe their existence to unnamed people who made quick, grave decisions. This kind of history rarely appears in grand monuments. It lives in small acts of protection. When an old object emerges after decades, it may carry not only ancient craftsmanship, but the courage of someone who refused to let memory vanish. Reform and opening changed China's economy within one generation. After 1978, China began shifting away from rigid central planning toward experiments with markets, foreign investment, rural incentives, and special economic zones. The changes did not happen all at once. They began unevenly, often through local trials that expanded when they succeeded. Farmers gained more control over production. After the commune system was loosened, township and village enterprises grew. Coastal regions attracted factories and investment. Cities expanded, migration surged, and millions left rural homes to work in new industrial zones. The transformation was staggering. A country once marked by scarcity became a major force in global manufacturing and trade. Families saw lives change through wages, education, consumer goods, housing, and mobility. Yet growth also brought inequality, environmental damage, corruption, and social strain. The power of this period lies in its speed. Within a single lifetime, China moved from ration coupons and collective fields towards skyscrapers, export ports, and a new place at the center of the world economy. Shenzhen grew from fishing communities into a megacity just north of Hong Kong. Shenzhen became one of the most dramatic symbols of China's reform era in the late 20th century. It was chosen as a special economic zone, a place where market experiments and foreign investment could be tested with unusual flexibility. The change was explosive. Factories, roads, offices, apartment towers, ports, and technology firms rose with astonishing speed. Migrants arrived from across China, bringing ambition, labor skills, and hope. Many came young, willing to work long hours in a city that seemed to be inventing itself every year. Shenzhen became associated with electronics manufacturing, entrepreneurship, design, and rapid urban growth. Its story can feel almost unreal because it compresses centuries of urban development into decades. Yet beneath the skyline were human stories of risk, separation from home, competition, and reinvention. Shenzhen shows how policy, geography, capital, and migration can turn a border region into a city of global consequence. China's one-child policy reshaped families for decades. Introduced nationwide around the turn of the 1980s, the policy aimed to slow population growth through strict birth limits, especially in urban areas. Its effects reached into the most intimate parts of life. Couples faced rules about when and whether they could have children. Local officials enforced targets through permits, fines, pressure, and sometimes coercive measures. Many only children grew up as the sole focus of parental and grandparental hopes, carrying intense educational and emotional expectations. The policy also contributed to aging pressures and the gender imbalance, especially where son preference led to selective choices. Rural exceptions, ethnic variations, and changing rules made the system complex, but its social impact was unmistakable. It altered family size, sibling relationships, inheritance patterns, and the experience of growing up. Later, China relaxed and then ended the restriction, but demographic habits do not change instantly. A policy designed around numbers reshaped childhood, marriage, aging, and the meaning of family. The Three Gorges Dam displaced towns and remade a river built across the NGTC. This enormous hydroelectric project became one of the largest engineering works in modern history. It promised electricity, improved navigation, and flood control on a river that had shaped Chinese civilization for millennia. Yet the cost was immense. More than 1 million people were relocated as rising waters covered towns, fields, archaeological sites, and familiar landscapes. Families moved from river valleys where ancestors have lived for generations into new settlements with uncertain futures. The dam also changed sediment flow, ecosystems, landslide risks, and the appearance of famous, gorgeous once celebrated by poets and travelers. Supporters saw it as a triumph of national capacity, a project equal to China's scale and energy needs. Critics pointed to human displacement and environmental consequences. Its story is powerful because it contains no simple feeling. The same wall of concrete can mean light for cities' safety, for some communities' loss for others, and a permanent alteration of one of Asia's great rivers. Beijing hosted the Olympics and presented a changing nation. In 2008, the opening ceremony announced China's arrival on a global stage with extraordinary confidence. Dramas, dancers, giant scroll imagery, fireworks, and carefully choreographed scenes connected ancient culture with modern spectacle. For many viewers around the world, it was a dazzling introduction to a country whose economic rise had already changed global politics and trade. For China, the games carried emotional weight. They marked recognition, pride, and the desire to show organizational power after a century often remembered through invasion, weakness, and humiliation. New stadium, subway lines, airport facilities, and urban projects transformed Beijing's appearance. Yet the event also drew scrutiny over human rights, censorship, displacement, pollution, and nationalism. That contrast made the Olympics more than sport. It became a symbol of China's complexity in the 21st century. The world watched athletes compete, but it was also watching a state tell a story about itself through architecture, ceremony, discipline, and ambition. China landed a rover on the far side of the moon in 2019. The Chang'e 4 mission achieved something no country had done before. It placed a lander and rover on the moon's far side, the hemisphere that never faces Earth. This region is difficult to reach because direct radio communication is blocked by the moon itself. China solved that problem by positioning a relay satellite to pass signals between the spacecraft and mission control. The landing site in the South Pole Aitken Basin was scientifically valuable because it lies within one of the largest and oldest impact structures in the solar system. The rover named U-22 began exploring a landscape humans had only seen from orbit. This achievement connected modern engineering with an ancient Chinese lunar imagination, including the goddess Chang'e and the jade rabbit of legend. The mission was not only a technical success, it showed that China had become a serious space power, capable of turning mythic distance into reachable ground. High-speed rail transformed travel across modern China within a relatively short period. China built the world's largest high-speed rail network. The effect on daily life is being enormous. Journeys that once took overnight travel can now be completed in a few hours. Cities that felt far apart have been pulled into closer economic and social contact. Students, workers, families, tourists, and business travelers move through stations that often feel like airports for trains. The system required tunnels, bridges, viaducts, signaling technology, manufacturing capacity, land acquisition, and national planning on a vast scale. It changed how people imagine distance. A person can leave one major city in the morning, attend a meeting or visit relatives, then return the same day. Smaller cities gained new connections to regional hubs. The network also became a symbol of modernization speed and state capacity. Like the Grand Canal in earlier centuries, high-speed rail shows how transport infrastructure can redraw the mental map of a country. China's written characters still link readers to ancient ancestors. A modern reader cannot simply pick up every ancient inscription and understand it with ease. Scripts, grammar, meanings, and pronunciations have changed across time, yet the continuity of the character tradition creates an extraordinary connection. Many characters still carry visible traces of older forms that began as pictures, symbols, or combinations of meaning and sound. A word for mountain can still suggest peaks. A word for tree can still echo a trunk and branches. More abstract characters preserve clues from old ways of thinking. Because written Chinese was shared across regions with different spoken forms, it helped bind educated culture over vast distances. Poems, official documents, histories, family records, shop signs, and calligraphy all participated in this system. Characters are not merely tools for recording language. They are cultural artifacts repeated by the hand. Every brushstroke belongs to a long inheritance. The right one is in a small way to join a chain older than empires. The Chinese zodiac blends animals' calendars and cultural imagination. The familiar cycle of 12 animals gives time a personality. Rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. Each carry associations that shape popular ideas about character, fortune, compatibility, and the mood of a year. The zodiac belongs to a wider calendrical system that also includes heavenly stems, earthly branches, lunar months, seasonal markers, and festival timing. Its appeal comes from the way it makes time feel intimate. A birth year becomes a story, a new year becomes not just another date, but the arrival of a creature with symbolic energy. The dragon year can feel especially charged because the dragon carries imperial, auspicious, and powerful associations in Chinese culture. People may treat zodiac ideas playfully seriously, or somewhere in between. Either way, the system remains alive because it connects cosmic rhythm with family talk, holiday decorations, matchmaking, jokes, baby names, and the shared excitement of renewal. Lunar New Year remains China's great festival of renewal. This celebration is not a single evening, but a season of preparation, reunion, ritual, food, and memory. Families clean homes to sweep away misfortune. Red decorations appear on doors and windows. Travelers make long journeys to return home, creating one of the largest annual movements of people on Earth. On New Year's Eve, meals bring relatives together around dishes rich with symbolism. Dumplings may suggest wealth, fish can suggest abundance. Elders give children red envelopes filled with money and blessing. Firecrackers and fireworks traditionally drive away bad luck, although rules differ in modern cities. Ancestors may be honored, dead settled, and fresh hopes spoken aloud. The festival matters because it joins personal life to the calendar. Even in a rapidly changing society, it calls people back toward family origin and belonging. The old year closes through noise, food, and warmth. The new one begins with wishes that life may open more generously. Tea-shaped Chinese trade, ritual, medicine, and daily life. At first, tea was valued partly for its stimulating and medicinal qualities. Over centuries, it became an art and industry, a social habit, and a marker of taste. Different regions developed green, black, white, oolong, yellow, and dark teas with distinct processing methods. Leaves could be steamed, pan-fired, rolled, oxidized, compressed, aged, or whisked, depending on period and place. Tea houses became spaces for conversation, business, music, storytelling, and rest. Scholars appreciated tea for its refinement. Monks used it to support meditation. Traders carried it across mountains, deserts, and seas. Compressed tea even served as a valuable commodity in border exchange, especially where pastoral peoples desired it for diet and custom. Its influence spread far beyond China, shaping Japanese, Tibetan, British, Russian, and global habits in different ways. The history of tea is the history of a leaf becoming civilization. It entered the body as warmth, then entered culture as ceremony. Chopsticks began as cooking tools before becoming tableware. Their early use was likely practical. Long sticks help cooks reach into hot pots, stir food, and handle ingredients without burning their hands. Over time, changes in food preparation made them ideal for eating. When ingredients were cut into small pieces before serving, diners no longer needed large knives at the table. This fit well with culinary habits that valued shared dishes, bite-sized morsels, and efficient cooking with limited fuel. Chopsticks also gained cultural meaning. Confucian ideals sometimes contrasted them with knives, which seemed more violent or associated with slaughter. Their materials varied from bamboo and wood to lacquer, ivory, silver, and jade, depending on wealth and occasion. Using them requires coordination, but once learned, they become delicate instruments. They can lift a grain, fold a dumpling, turn a fish fragment, or gather noodles. Something so ordinary at the table carries a history of kitchen's etiquette, philosophy, and the quiet intelligence of design. Mahjong carries strategy, luck, and memory through clicking tiles. The game developed in the 19th century and became one of China's most recognizable pastimes. Its tiles marked with characters, bamboo circles, winds, dragons, and flowers create a world of pattern and possibility. Players draw, discard, watch, calculate, bluff, and remember what has already passed across the table. Chance matters because no one controls the wall of tiles. Skill matters because each decision reveals judgment, risk, and restraint. Mahjong spread through families, tea houses, clubs, migrant communities, and overseas Chinatowns. It became entertainment's social glue, and sometimes a source of gambling tension. The sound is part of its identity. Tiles shuffle, stack, click, and fall in rhythms that many people associate with home elders, holidays, or long afternoons. The game is fascinating because it turns memory into play. A player is not only building a hand, they are reading other minds through tiny choices around the table. Luck speaks first, but attention answers. Chinese garden to create miniature worlds of stone, water, and balance. A classical garden is not simply a pretty place. It is a carefully composed landscape meant to unfold through movement. Rocks become mountains, ponds become lakes, winding paths slow the visitor down, windows frame scenes like paintings. Pavilions offer places to pause, write, drink tea, or listen to rain. The finest gardens often hide and reveal themselves gradually, so a small space can feel much larger than it is. Scholars especially valued gardens as retreats from official pressure, where nature could be shaped without being reduced to straight lines. Strange stones, old trees, bamboo, lotus bridges, and borrowed views all created layered meaning. A garden could suggest moral refinement, artistic taste, philosophical withdrawal, or friendship. Its design worked through contrast. Solid stone met moving water enclosure, met openness, human craft met natural form. To walk through such a place is to enter a world built for attention, where every turn teaches the eye to linger. Calligraphy became both handwriting and a measure of inner character in Chinese culture. Writing beautifully was never only about legibility. The movement of the brush was believed to reveal something of the person behind it. Strength, balance, restraint, freedom, discipline, and spirit could all be sensed in a line of ink. Because calligraphy used the same characters as ordinary writing, it joined communication with art in a uniquely direct way. Scholars practiced famous models, studied ancient masters, and cultivated brush control over years. A single stroke required pressure, speed, angle, moisture, and intention. Too stiff, and it felt lifeless; too loose, and it lost structure. Officials were judged partly through their written hand, because script suggested education and self-cultivation. Calligraphy also made the past physically present. Copying an old master meant feeling the rhythm of another mind through one's own wrist. Ink dried quickly, leaving decisions visible forever. In that sense, calligraphy is thought made traceable. It turns character into motion, then motion into memory. Traditional Chinese medicine preserved ideas about balance and the body for thousands of years. Chinese healers developed ways of understanding illness through patterns rather than isolated symptoms alone. They considered pulse, complexion, temperature, pain, appetite, sleep, season, emotion, and environment. Concepts such as qi, yin, and yang meridians and the 5 phases gave practitioners a framework for interpreting imbalance. Treatments could include herbs, acupuncture, loxibustion, massage, diet, exercise, and breathing practices. Some remedies have been investigated scientifically with mixed results, while others remain rooted in traditional theory. What makes the system historically important is its continuity and breadth. Preserved medical observation across generations and shaped how millions of people understood the relationship between body and world. A patient was not only a malfunctioning mechanism, they were seen as part of changing climates, foods, moods, and rhythms. Whether approached as cultural history, living practice, or medical tradition, it shows a civilization trying to read the body as a landscape of balance, movement, and connection. Chinese history is recorded through dynasties, but lived through families. Textbooks often move from one ruling house to another, as though history were a procession of emperors, capitals, and battles. For most people, life was more immediate. A family worried about harvests, marriages, exams, taxes, illness, floods, ancestors, and children. Grandparents told stories, parents saved money for education or dowries, sons and daughters left home for work, service trade, or marriage. Genealogies preserved names across generations, linking households to villages and lineages. An imperial decree might matter greatly, but it entered life through grain demands, military service, legal disputes, or opportunities for advancement. This is the deeper pulse beneath dynastic change. When a dynasty fell, families still had to cook, mourn, plant, borrow, teach, and survive. Their choices carried culture forward in ways no throne could fully command. China's vast past becomes easier to feel when we remember that behind every official era were kitchens, courtyards, graves, lullabies, quarrels, and hopes. Modern China still carries echoes of emperors, scholars, and farmers. The country today is filled with skyscrapers, satellites, high-speed trains, megacities, digital payments, and global ambitions. Yet older patterns have not simply vanished. Respect for education still carries echoes of examination culture. Family duty still reflects long traditions of kinship and ancestor memory. Political language can still draw on ideas of unity, order, humiliation, renewal, and historical destiny. Rural experience continues to shape national memory even as hundreds of millions have moved into cities. Festivals, characters, foods, proverbs, martial stories, landscape ideals, and classical references remain woven into modern life. China's present is not a museum of the past, but neither is it a clean break from it. The astonishing thing is the layering space mission may bear the name of a moon goddess. A new city may rise near an ancient village. A student using a smartphone may write characters descended from signs carved on bone. The past is not behind China. It travels with it. And so our journey through the history of China begins to settle. We have traveled from the first carved questions on ancient bones to bronze vessels glowing in ritual halls. We have followed emperors through walled capitals, crossed deserts with silk and scripture, and watched scholars turn ink into power. We have stood beside clay soldiers in the dark earth, drifted along the Grand Canal, and seen dynasties rise, flourish, fracture, and fade. We have followed treasure ships across the ocean, listened for poetry beneath moonlit mountains, and walked through palace gates where the world outside seemed to disappear. We have seen invention change the shape of civilization. Paper printing, porcelain, gunpowder, a compass, each one carrying China's influence far beyond its borders. And we have moved into more recent times too, through revolution, war, hardship, reform, and transformation. From old imperial courtyards to modern railways, from village fields to lunar missions, China's story remains vast, layered, and alive. Now let those centuries begin to soften in your mind. Let the names and places drift apart like lanterns on the slow river. You do not need to remember every dynasty, every emperor, or every turning point. Just keep the feeling of it. A civilization moving through time, a brushstroke crossing paper, a bell sounding in a distant courtyard, a road disappearing toward the mountains. If you enjoyed this journey, you're warmly invited to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too. And if you are still awake, another gentle history video will be waiting on the screen, ready whenever you are. But for now, let your shoulders loosen. Let your breathing slow. Let the long story of the day fade into the background. Sleep well and good night, you.